A good day to all. This is the continuation of the story, An Angel in Disguise. Page number 18, the second paragraph. What have you there? Sharply questioned Mrs. Thompson. So, Jane, the wife of Joe, Mrs. Thompson is asking Joe, what do you have there? She is not happy. Joe felt the child start and shrink against him. Start means a sudden movement of surprise, and shrink means become smaller in size. So Maggie was scared and she shrank into the arms of Joe. She was afraid of Jane. He did not reply except by a look that was pleading and cautionary, that said, "Wait a moment for explanations and be gentle." So Joe didn't reply verbally by using voice, but he just looked at him in a pleading. Pleading means begging, and cautionary, a careful manner, because he doesn't want to make Jane angry. And that look meant, just give him some time, then he will explain. And passing in, carried Maggie to a small chamber on the first floor and laid her on a bed. Then stepping back, she shut the door and stood face to face with his vinegar-tempered wife, the passageway outside. So he went to a chamber. Chamber means room. And he laid down Maggie on a comfortable bed. Then he came out. Then he was ready to talk with his wife, Jane. "You haven't brought home that sick brat." Anger and astonishment were the tones of Mrs. Joe Thompson. Her face was in a flame. So Jane is asking Joe, "Why did you bring this brat?" Brat means child. She was angry and she was surprised. Astonishment means surprise. So her face was in flame. She was so angry that her face is like it was on fire. It was so red in color because of anger. "I think women's hearts are sometimes very hard," said Joe. Then Joe said, "Sometimes women's heart is very hard. They are not soft. They do not have kindness." Usually, Joe Thompson got out of his wife's way or kept rigidly silent. Rigidly silent means strongly silent. And non-compactive. Non-compactive means to avoid fight when she fired upon any subject. So usually Joe doesn't fight with Jane. When Jane starts a fight, he would just keep silent, or he would just go out of her way. It was with some surprise, therefore, that she now encountered a firmly set countenance. Countenance means face, and a resolute pair of eyes. Resolute means determined. So Jane was very surprised when she saw Joe with a very determined, in a very determined manner. He was determined about Maggie. Women's hearts are not half so hard as men's. So Jane is telling, men's heart is very hard, all men's heart, but women's heart, they are not half as hard as men's heart. Joe saw a quick intuition. Intuition means ability to understand something without firm reason. So for some reason he understood that Jane was surprised that he answered back to her. Usually he doesn't do that. That his resolute bearing had impressed his wife, and he answered quickly with real indignation. Indignation means anger provoked because of unfair treatment. So Joe was angry at Jane because he was treated in a very unfair manner. He is just doing a good thing and Jane is treating Joe as if he is doing something bad. So he replied in an indignant manner, with indignation. Be that as it may, every woman at the funeral turned her eyes regularly from the sick child's face, and when the cart went off with her dead mother, hurried away and left her alone in that old hut with the sun not an hour in the sky. Where were John and Kate? Asked Mrs. Thompson. So Joe is saying that, okay, you are saying women's hearts are not as half as hard as men's heart. Then why did all the women who came to the funeral or who came to Maggie's house left her without adopting her or without doing anything for her. No one, no one was ready to do anything for her. Then Jane is asking Joe, she has Kate and John, right? Farmer John's toast. Toast means just putting a pen on the table. So Farmer John's tossed John into his wagon and drove off. Katie went home with Mrs. Ellis, but nobody wanted the poor sick woman. Send her to the poorhouse was the cry. So Joe explained, Farmer John's took John, Mrs. Ellis took Kate, but no one wanted Maggie, and everyone was crying. Everyone was crying means everyone was publicly demanding, like it was a common decision to take her to the poorhouse. Why didn't you let her go then? What did you bring her here for? So Jane is asking, then why is she not in the poorhouse? Why did you bring her to the house, to their house? She can't walk to the poorhouse, said Joe. Somebody's arms must carry her, and mine are strong enough for that task. So Joyce explained, she's bedridden, she cannot walk to the poorhouse on her own, so someone strong like me should carry her. Then why didn't you keep on? Why did you stop here? Demanded the wife. Then Jane asked, then why are you not at the poorhouse now? Why did you stop here? Because I am not apt to go on fool's errands. Apt means appropriate. Errands means job. So he said, I am not a fool. The guardians must first be seen, then permit obtained. So we have to get permission from the guardians of the poorhouse first, then only we could hand over to the people of the poorhouse. There was no gainsaying this. Gainsaying means oppose, deny or contradict. So Jane was not able to contradict what Joe was saying because he was telling a valid point. When will you see the guardians? Was asked with irrepressible impatience. So irrepressible means not hiding. So without hiding how impatient Jane is with Maggie, she asked, when are you going to see the guardians? Go immediately. Then Joe said, tomorrow. Why put it off till tomorrow? Go at once for the permit and get the whole thing off your hands tonight. Then Jane is asking, why are you waiting till tomorrow? Do it today, finish it off as fast as you can. Jane set the wheel right with an impressiveness of tone that greatly subdued his wife. So Joe called his wife Jane very sweetly, in a very impressive manner, so that Jane actually stopped fighting. She quieted her voice. I read in the Bible sometimes, and I find much said about little children, how the Savior rebuked the disciples who would not receive them. So in the Bible, there is a story about Jesus. Here Savior means Jesus, okay. So once Jesus was in the garden and some children wanted to talk to him. But the disciples of Jesus, disciples means followers. Followers of Jesus didn't allow the children to go near Jesus. But Jesus rebuked. Rebuke means disapproved the disciples who would not receive them. How he took them up in his arms and blessed them, and how he said, whosoever gave them even a cup of cold water should not go unrewarded. So what did Jesus do? He took them up, he blessed them, and he told everyone, whosoever, it means whoever give the children, even if it is just a cup of cold water, they will be rewarded. They will be gifted. Now, it is a small thing for us to keep this poor motherless little one for a single night, to be kind to her for a single night, to make her life comfortable for a single night. So Joe is telling Jane, it is not a big thing for us. It is not a big thing. It is a simple thing that we can do. We will also be blessed. Let us stay for one night. The voice of the strong, rough man shook, and he turned his head away so that moisture in his eyes might not be seen. So Joe started crying, thinking about the situation of Maggie, and he turned his head away and wiped away his tears. Mrs. Thompson did not answer, but a soft feeling crept into her heart. Crept meaning moved slowly. Crept is the past of creep. So a soft feeling started to creep inside the mind of Jane, even though she didn't say anything. So she is starting to change. We already saw that the importance of transformative power. So Jane is starting to transform, change from a bad person to a good person. Look at her kindly, Jane. Speak to her kindly, said Joe, think of her dead mother and the loneliness, the pain, the sorrow that must be on her coming life. The softness of his heart gave unwanted means unusual eloquence. Eloquence means fluent speech to his lips. So Joe asked Jane to think about her situation, about her mother. Since Joe was speaking sincerely, he had no trouble finding the right words. He was giving a very sincere, very powerful speech. Mrs. Thompson did not reply, but presently turned towards the little chamber where her husband had deposited Maggie, and pushing open the door, went quietly in. So she didn't say anything, but she went to Jane's room. Joe did not follow. He saw that her state had changed and felt that it would be best to leave her alone with the child. Joe didn't follow Jane because he thought it would be better to give Jane and Maggie some privacy, let them have the time to bond, to connect, to understand each other. And he understood that Jane is already starting to change. That's a change of mind in her. So he went to his shop, which stood near the house, and worked until dusky evening released him from labor. So he went to his shop, and it was near his house, and he kept on working until it was dusky evening. Dusky means dark evening. It is almost night. A light shining through the little chamber windows was the first object that attracted Joe's attention on turning towards the house. When he got out of his workshop, he was happy to see that the light in Maggie's room was on, which means that Jane and Maggie are still talking. It was a good omen. Omen means sign. The path led him by these windows, and when opposite, he could not help pausing to look in. It was now dark enough outside to screen him from observation. So in order to get inside his house, he has to pass the window. So when he reached the window, he wanted to look inside and know what is happening. But the people inside the house cannot see him because it is dark outside. Maggie lay a little raised on the pillow with the lamp shining full upon her face. Mrs. Thompson was sitting by the bed, talking to the child, but her back was towards the window so that her countenance was not seen. So Maggie was lying on the bed and Jane was sitting next to her talking, but Joe was not able to see Jane's face because her back was towards the window. From Maggie's face, therefore, Joe must read the character of their intercourse. Intercourse here means interaction, communication. So since he can only see Maggie's face, he has to read everything what's going on in that room from Maggie's reaction. He saw that her eyes were intently means attentively fixed upon his wife. That now and then a few words came, as if in answers from her lips, that her expression was sad and tender, but he saw nothing of bitterness or pain. So Maggie was attentively listening to what Jane is saying, and every now and then Maggie would move her lips, which means that she is answering some questions of Jane. Joe was not able to hear the conversation because he was kind of far from them. Maggie's face was sad and soft. Maybe she might be telling about her sad story to Jane, but her face was not bitter or in pain. It means that Jane was not insulting or hurting Maggie. A deep drawn breath was followed by one of relief as a waist lifted itself from his heart. So Joe felt so relieved, like because they are also bonding. He felt as if a great weight was lifted from his heart. On entering, Joe did not go immediately to the little chamber. His heavy tread about the kitchen brought his wife somewhat hurriedly from the room where she had been with Maggie. So after he entered the house, Joe didn't go directly to Maggie's room. His heavy tread, the tread means walk. So he walked usually with making sound. So when Jane heard Joe walking in the kitchen, she came out in a hurried manner. Joe thought it best not to refer to the child, nor to manifest. Manifest means show any concern regarding her. So Joe thought he is not going to mention about Maggie. He was waiting to see whether Jane would talk about Maggie. How soon will supper be ready? He asked. Right soon, answered Mrs. Thompson, beginning to bustle about. Bustle means move in an energetic and busy manner. T of bustle is silent, okay? There was no asperity. Asperity means harshness in her voice. So when Joe asked when will supper be ready, Jane said it will be ready soon. And she started to make the dinner in a busy manner. And she was not harsh, she was behaving in a very normal manner. After washing from his hands and face the dust and soil of work, Joe left the kitchen and went to the little bedroom. A pair of large, bright eyes looked up at him from the snowy bed, looked at him tenderly, gratefully, and pleadingly. So after Joe cleaned himself, he went into Maggie's room. So Maggie looked at him from the snowy bed. Snowy bed means very clean white bed, in a very thankful, grateful, soft manner. How his heart swelled in his bosom. Swell means become large. Bosom means chest. So when he saw Maggie, he was very happy. He felt as if his heart was getting larger in his chest. It was because he felt happy. With a quicker motion came the heartbeats, and his heart started beating fast with the excitement of seeing Maggie. Joe sat down and now, for the first time, examining the thin frame carefully under the lamplight, saw that it was an attractive face and full of a childish sweetness which suffering had not been able to obliterate. So now is when Joe actually observed Maggie properly for the first time. He realized she has an attractive face and she still has the sweetness of a child, even though she has a sad story. Even though she had suffered a lot in her life, she hasn't lost her sweetness. Obliterate means destroy, so her happiness or her sweetness was not yet obliterated. Your name is Maggie, he said as he sat down and took her soft little hands in his. Yes, sir. Her voice struck a chord that cured in a low strain of music. So when Joe asked, is your name Maggie? She replied, yes, sir. And she replied in a very musical manner. The meaning of chord is a group of notes that makes harmony. Harmony is very musical sound. So her sound was so musical, it was like a musical instrument. Have you been sick long? Yes, sir. What a sweet patience was in her tone. Has the doctor been to see you? He used to come. So Joe was asking Maggie, have you been sick for a long time? She said yes. And she also said the doctor used to visit her. Okay, we can wind up for today. Thank you all.